Welcome to another Cool Cast, a video cast where I interview super cool people who've done super awesome and amazing things in their life. I'm Cindy Lou Barlow, and today I get to interview a real live American bard. What is a bard, you ask? Well, in Celtic cultures, a bard is a professional storyteller, a poet, a composer, and an oral historian. And my guest is that and even more. Whatever it is that transfixes an audience, this woman has it big time. Ladies and gentlemen, meet harp goddess, singer, performer, composer, comedian, and storyteller, Deborah Henson Conant. Hello, Deborah.
Hello.
It is so good to see you. So I'm your third interview today. You have got a huge schedule of people interviewing you. You've got a big concert coming up online, which we're going to get into in just a minute. But welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm so glad to be here.
This is an interview I've wanted to do for a year, actually, now. So this is like a dream come true. I want to quote from Siegel from the Boston Globe. He says, Deborah is a combination of Leonard Bernstein, Steven Tyler, and Xena, the warrior princess. Now, I have seen you perform, and I would say, spot on, spot on. What do you think he meant by that? I'm sure, obviously, you take that as a compliment.
I absolutely do take that as a compliment. I mean, Leonard Bernstein, I think Ed realized exactly what I wanted to do, that I've always wanted to be Leonard Bernstein, meaning who I saw Leonard Bernstein as being a leader in music, but also an ambassador to the world of music.
Yes.
And a composer as well as a performer, as well as a conductor, and a composer of musicals as well as a composer of serious music. And so Leonard Bernstein is really important to me. That I grew up with, like, Lenny Bernstein, you know, he's the guy. And Xena Warrior Princess is that image of womanhood that is strong, powerful, and true, you know, with truth. Also, the harp, because it straps on me, I have that feeling that there it is in front of me, you know, and I just feel like I'm so.
It's very powerful. You
Yeah.
do look very powerful on stage, and that is a great description. I remember the very first time I ever saw you perform. It was really transformative. I don't think I've ever seen a concert of yours and, you know, or listened to some of your songs without crying. You know, it's just, you really do move people in such a way with your stories, your personality, the edginess that you'll take things to the edge. You say things that other people are thinking but are afraid to express, you know. So
like what, Cindy? Like what?
Well, you know, like I have to say, like your song, Congratulations.
You made it.
It's like the best birthday song ever written, ever. And when I first heard you sing it, of course, you know, I cried, but I've actually played it for so many people for their birthdays now. But it was, you know, you said things in that people need to hear, but they're also don't say to themselves, you know, like, congratulations, you've made it this far. I mean, it's like, yeah. And when you say, go to the mirror and look at yourself and you say this, it's just so moving. It just is so moving.
Well, that song, which is actually in the big orchestra project that I did, I did it with orchestra as well as doing it solo all the time. I wrote that song for my 40th birthday.
Is that right?
I didn't get it finished until I was 41. Yeah, I needed to hear that song. I needed to have a future I could walk into that I could feel good about, and that I could congratulate myself, and I could look back at myself as a child and say, yeah, congratulations, you made it this far.
Yeah.
And that I really also needed to be able to acknowledge that there are times when you give up, there are times when you give in, there's times when losing is the only way to win.
That describes a relationship, right?
Yeah. A relationship with myself, a relationship with life. And
yes, yeah.
you know, I used to sing that song to myself a lot. Like all the time I was just singing that song. And there are other songs in my repertoire that you can sort of look at and be like, ah, that's a song that I needed to hear. That's a song that I wrote for myself. I mean, there's one called Never Too Late. That's similar to that. In the sense that it's a song I wrote to get me through.
Yeah. 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 One of the things when you said you wrote that song for yourself, I love that there's another song, I Love You Just the Way You Are, that you say, I wrote for my boyfriend to sing to me. I just love that. It's like, just give us a script, Deborah, and then we'll just say whatever you want.
Exactly. Well, sometimes you need to do that. It's funny when you talk about that. I mean, when I think through even just the songs that are the pieces and songs, because I'm an instrumentalist as well as being a vocal. I mean, singing songs is really important to me. But when I'm playing with symphony orchestra, and also when I'm just playing solo harp, the instrument itself is so exciting to explore.
Yeah.
And when I think about the songs, and I think about, well, there's one about how much I love my garbage man.
I know. That's awesome. Yes.
There's one about, combining the book Catcher in the Rye with the song Coming Through the Rye, and what that really means, what the power of that, what it means to be able to catch someone coming through the rye, what it means to have somebody who will catch you. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of look, and then there's one called The Danger Zone, in which the entire orchestra is wearing lab coats, and it's all about, the stress analysis of a strapless evening gown. And there's a story about the story of one of my favorite stories in the whole Invention and Alchemy is 996, which is the story of the 1001 Arabian Nights, but the story of what happened on number 996.
Yeah.
Why it happened and why there's only 1001 Arabian Nights. And the reason I love that story is that it's about storytelling. And it's about this sultan. I think everybody knows the story of the sultan and Scheherazade, that this sultan had a wife who he loved, and she betrayed him, and therefore he would trust no woman again after that. And so he would marry a woman, have a first wedding night with her, and then he would kill her. He would literally chop her head off. And this went on and on and on and on, and there were almost no women left in this area. And finally, a woman named Scheherazade, who happened to be the daughter of the Grand Vizier, whatever that is, she said, look, I want to go marry the Sultan. And her father was like, don't do this. And she was like, no, I got an idea. She was a master storyteller. And the story goes that she went and she was able to tell a story each night that only went as far as, the cliffhanger. And then he couldn't kill her that night because he had to know, the story. So, and I'm always thinking, yeah, and this is how soap operas were born.
Exactly.
But what happens so that happens for all these nights. In number 996, you realize that the Sultan, he loves these stories, but he also feels the power of this woman to tell a story that will make him not bring her to her death. And he feels vulnerable because he cannot tell a story. And she is still in danger until he has the power to tell story. And in night number 996, he finds his storytelling voice. And you see that on screen. You see, because he's playing the cello. The conductor actually came off the podium and played the cello in this with me. And in that moment, you see him start to tell the story. At first, it just starts like almost angrily, and then it just becomes this solo moment where he can finally have the power to move her. And when he has the power to move her with a story, he no longer has to kill her. He no longer feels vulnerable. He feels connected with her, and they can play then together. They can actually tell the stories together. And to be able to create that story with a full symphony orchestra is just it's an incredible dream. It has so many moments of music in it that just are like my favorite moments. There's a waltz moment when like the mel da dee dum da 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 da. It's just like, and the whole symphony's playing it. I'm like, yes, yes. I mean, going back to this thing of like writing a song for my birthday, writing, I love being on stage with a symphony orchestra. I love being that close. And I just imagine that I spent all these years learning how to write for symphony orchestra so I could have that experience, that incredible experience of being in the center of that sound. And then if possible to bring, well, not if possible, my job is as an ambassador to the world of music and imagination. So my job is then to bring the audience in through that window that opens up in me. And that's what we did with Invention and Alchemy, is to bring people closer than the front row. The front row is good, but being on stage.
What is invention? What does that mean to you? And what does alchemy mean to you?
When I was, I think in my early 20s, I was reading a lot of John Steinbeck. And there was a quote in there, and I don't know it exactly, but it was something like, invention only happens, it's an individual act. It only happens in the lonely mind of man. No two people ever invented anything together. It happens in the lonely mind of man. And I thought about that. I knew I was really inventive. And, but I started to notice, and especially when I started working with symphony orchestras, and especially when I made that transition from writing something on the page where everything is perfect to bringing it to the symphony where I hear each individual voice, which is not perfect, but it is human. It is beyond perfect. It is more beautiful than perfect. And I discovered that when that invention is met with collaboration, there's an alchemy, there's a magic that happens that the lonely mind of the human cannot make. It only happens in collaboration. It only happens in partnership. And that is why this is called Invention and Alchemy. And you see it, you just see it on stage because you see the composer and performer, soloist, and you see the orchestra, but then you see individual members of the orchestra come and play with me. And you see that constant invention and alchemy and invention and alchemy. You see it over and over again. And I see it over and over again in life. It is the beauty of the individual, and then it is the power of magic that you don't know what's going to happen when you mix those two. You can't predict it.
Yeah, it's funny because I wanted to talk to you about the magical child, and I'm just going to segue here because the way that I see you is a magical child. I want to hear a little bit about your early beginnings, because it seems to me that you have, there's a difference between magical thinking and thinking magically.
Mm.
Magical thinking can be just, airy-fairy, right?
Okay.
But thinking magically is like opportunity or curiosity or expansion. And when I listen to your music, listen to your lyrics, even listening to you speak about your art form and the way that you the way that you see life, it's so magical. And so my first question is just, I'd love to hear about the beginnings, like where you were born, who your parents were. Did you come from a musical family? Are you an only child? What's your deal?
I'm happy to talk about that. I just want to take a moment to talk about magic. Mm-hmm. I remember early on noticing that there's mystery and there's magic, and mystery may be interesting, but magic was more interesting. True magic, interesting to me, and it appeared to me that mystery was all about holding something back or withholding something, and what was magical is when you tell the absolute truth and then you do something and it's just like it's and you see the truth and what's happening together. So to me, magic is truth.
Wow.
So as a child, I mean, I, my family was musical. I think I want to talk about my grandparents, my two grandmothers. I was oddly from a very matriarchal family. There were grandfathers, but they were kind of absent, and my father was also absent. But I had my parents divorced when I was very young, and I first went to live with my mother's mother, and then my mother and I went to live with my father's mother. So I was living with these grandmothers, and my mother's mother was Jewish, and she was an immigrant from Russia. And in that culture, to be a musician is to be, it's this elevated being, to be an artist, especially to be a musician. Leonard Bernstein, for example. Mm. In my father's mother, Edith, so to Anna, music was this high thing. To Edith was Swedish, and she was very, very much a part of community. And we would go to cancer dressing things, and it was community. She was a teacher. And I remember Edith saying, and I don't know if she was trying to put down the other side of the family. It doesn't. Forget that. What Edith said was, look, people have to sing. They just have to. You have to eat your peas. You have to go to the bathroom. You have to sing. People have to sing. Someone has to keep them together. That's why I play the piano. So to her, music was people have to sing. It's a thing they have to do. Someone has to keep them together. And that's the job of the musician, is to keep them together. And so I had those two sides. And I think that is who I am, is those two sides. And I think that, again, I just realized that just now, that's also the invention and the alchemy. Yeah. Even though the alchemy, in Edith's case, it was very down to earth, and Anna's, it's just like marvelous.
When she said people have to sing, what in you got that? Like, what did that mean to you? Like, why do they have to sing?
Because what I got was, it's a thing people have to do. They have to go to the bathroom. It's a thing they have to do. They have to breathe. They right. They have to sing. People have to sing. They can't exist without it. They don't have to sing well. They just have to sing. And she didn't sing well, but she did not stop from singing. And those gave me the two sides of music. The side that is the elevated, here I'm an ambassador into this world, this amazing elevated world. The thing that, when artists lift you from your, from the experience of life for a moment, lift you and then drop you lightly back and slightly change. That's the elevated side of music. And then there's the side of music that is just about human community and human connection on an equal basis. So this is its human basis, on an elevated basis. And this is just like person to person to person. It's right. Music. Yeah. Everybody can sing together.
I really relate to that because I've worked with like really young children, and anytime, like if there's chaos anywhere, I will get them to sing, and everybody does exactly what I say, because we're singing and they're all sitting there. If we're having to wait for snack, I would have them all sing and they would wait for snack. So you're absolutely right. It ties us in. It makes something chaotic into something that's more solid.
Well, I gotta know here. So if you're waiting for a snack, do you start singing, "Oh, we're waiting for a snack"? We're waiting for
you would probably the Bumblebee song or something like that.
Well, but when you just said that, and I wondered if that was what you were singing, I was thinking, right, once it goes back to the story of 996, once we can express ourselves and feel that we are heard, it does change everything.
Yeah, story really is very important, and it is so cathartic to tell our story to someone, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when I tell these stories of these other people, so there's lots of different stories in invention and alchemy. There's the story of the minstrel boy who goes off to war, who cannot do war, and he dies, and his sword and so his harp is there, all dismantled, and yet that harp is the thing that is able to do what the whole war wasn't able to do. That harp is picked up by the enemy. That harp opens their heart. I love telling all those stories, that story and the story of congratulations, you made it this far, and the story of stress analysis of a strapless evening gown, and what that is. I feel like...
And the Unitarian church that couldn't sing, or the choir that couldn't sing.
Right, that's
Is
right.
it the Unitarian choir that couldn't sing?
That's right. I don't think that's an invention in alchemy. I think I wrote that afterwards, but yes,
okay.
that's right. The Unitarian choir who can't sing, but when they sang, it felt like heaven couldn't wait to hear.
I know. I love that song. It was.
And that is Edith. Is knowing that the human voice raised is a glorious thing, no matter what it sounds like. There's another line in that song, which isn't an invention in alchemy. There's a line that is, if once you've heard the angels sing, no matter where or when, your heart will beat at the walls of your life, longing to hear it again. And that, I would say, is also one of my experiences of life. I grew up, hearing my parents sing. I didn't live with them together. I never saw my mother and father together. I only saw them together once.
Were they both vocalists, or did they play instruments, or what did they do?
They both sang, and singing was deeply important to both of them. He was a judge. She was an opera singer. He became a judge, and she became.
And were you an only child?
Well, I was their only child. And then, they split after I was like 1. And then my mother remarried, and I have a brother, and my father remarried, and I have two sisters, and, lots of half brothers and sisters and step brothers and sisters. But so my experience, I didn't have a family, I didn't grow up with a family. But when I think about my first experience of life, which was in my mother's womb, it's not like let me go back there, and amniotic fluid is pretty good today. I don't remember it like that, but I know that the first thing I heard was my parents singing.
Right.
Now, I may have also heard them fighting. I don't know. Those may be the two things that I heard. And certainly the singing, their voices, and what a human voice means to me. The human voice, it's like it means everything to me. There's something about it and how it fills my ears.
How old were you when you felt the magic of music? How old were you when you felt like this is the most amazing thing?
Well, the moment of my awakening, I would say, as a composer, was when I think it was, and it's interesting because it opens up invention and alchemy. It's the first story there. I think I was 9, and I didn't really listen to the stereo that much because I played music. I played the ukulele and I sang. But for some reason, my parents were not there, and I turned on the stereo and music came on. I'd never heard anything like it, and I was incapacitated. And it was this big house with...
What kind of music was it?
Well, it was Debussy's La Mer. It was, yeah. And I just know because I waited to hear it to the end what it was. But until I got there, the experience, there was such a compulsion in me to get close to it. I never had felt a compulsion. And I felt that I had to get closer and closer to it. And I actually tried to crawl into the stereo. And when my parents came home, they said they found me. I was like lodged underneath this stereo, and I was just sobbing. I don't know. I don't know. Have you ever read Flatland? It's about a two-dimensional world where everybody just lives on a flat piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And it's a geometry story anyway. But if you lived on a flat piece of paper, there isn't any up and there isn't any down, right?
Right.
So you only see like what comes at you. But somebody from up could just reach in and pluck your heart or touch your heart, or they could do anything because you're on a flat surface. That's what I felt happened. I felt like something came from another dimension. I was incapable. It came from another dimension, and it took my heart in that moment. And I couldn't not cry, and I couldn't not try to be close to it. And I kept trying to get closer and closer to it all my life. I would like lie under pianos while people were playing it. And it wasn't until I started writing for symphony orchestra and I was on the stage as the soloist when I realized this is it. This is what it's like to be inside the music.
Wow. Wow. So that experience put you inside the radio.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it took, decades and decades and decades, and it took a lot of work on my own part to create the situation in which I could do that.
Yeah. I want to also ask you a little bit about, a lot of your stories are almost very supernatural or fairy tales. As a child, besides the music, did you see the world as magical? I mean, did you have like magical beings around you? Did you see things that way at all?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. A couple of things are happening. My stuffed animal, we moved every year. Like every year, every summer we moved to a different town. So I was definitely disoriented a lot. And I had my stuffed animals, and those were really important to me. They were real to me. And I didn't like dolls. I liked the animals. But I think you're making me think of one moment. When I was in my early 20s, and I started the harp as an adult, and I was just starting to play at concerts. And I was very nervous about it. And I went to a therapist, and I remember her saying, well, we're going to do this thing. I want you to imagine that it's like 2 days before the concert. And she said, I want you to put your hand on the arm of the chair. She said, whenever you feel nervous, just raise your finger just like this. She said, but before we start, I want you to imagine a safe place, the safest place you could imagine. And I closed my eyes, and I was in this forest. And I was at the top of a hill, and there was a little tiny house down at the bottom of the hill. And I walked down the hill, and I looked in. It was at a Dutch door, and I looked in, and there was this mule in overalls sitting in a rocking chair next to a wood-burning stove, smoking a pipe and reading. And she looked up and looked at me, and she said, I was wondering when you'd get here.
Wow. And it was a mule? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was a mule. And her name is Bora J. Debs. And she was my ambassador, actually, to the world of the world authors. And the world authors were this group of people or whatever beings who I could go to and ask questions. I could ask things of them. They wouldn't do it for me, but they were the world authors. They would just tell me what I needed to do. Anyway, and then there were more characters. There was Frank Skink, he's a lizard who doesn't change color, but he can change size. So but these characters didn't come into my life until that moment. And although, now that you mention it, just a moment, I want to show you something. Now that you mention it, I did write stories. I started writing musicals when I was like 12. And so this is my musical, The Golden Cage, which is about a birdman.
Yes.
Who is searching for the golden cage.
Hold that up one more time, just so that we can really see it. Yeah. So this is actually, you just auditioned people for this. Am I right?
Yeah, right. We're in the middle of auditions. And
yeah.
And just a second, since you asked.
Okay.
Right here. I just realized. Yeah, what an interesting question. Okay, so I didn't draw these.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Oh, that looks so much like Lewis Carroll.
Right.
Yeah, from Alice in Wonderland.
Right. So this is Boris. So yes, obviously,
awesome.
Mythical character there. And then this is Althea, who,
Oh
so
my gosh.
Boris has been searching for the golden cage, which is the mythical symbol of security for all bird people. And when he discovers it, it's everything he ever dreamt of. And with just one thing, there's somebody stuck inside of it. And that is Althea. And so it centers around getting her out. But when I took them down from the shelf, I have to go get what was up there.
Okay.
Because what I discovered underneath them, I had forgotten about. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I do. So these are my drawings. So these are people.
Oh, you drew that?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite guys. I just call him the martini guy. I don't know really what he is. So these are my friends. This is I as I'm talking to you, I'm seeing, oh right, the stuffed animals. I didn't really get it. Yeah, so I did a whole series of animals playing the piano, which I just think is, I just love the character, and I love thinking, what are they thinking? What's this mouse singing? And I just like
He's singing congratulations. I can tell you that's what he's singing. He's so out there.
Yeah. And these are just, I mean, you probably can't see these, but these are the doodle versions, and then I often will color them. So yes, I do. I love character. I love seeing character in human beings, seeing character in animals, seeing character in anything. And I have a program called Strings of Passion, or the 7 principles of creative resonance that I discovered will take you from creative impulse to creative expression. And the first 3 is impulse, when you have a creative impulse. The second is, for that to be able to go into the world, there needs to be some kind of structure that it lives on. And then the third principle is the principle of character. And the reason I'm saying this now is that with those 3 things, with an impulse, if you're touched by an idea, if you have a structure to put that idea into, and if you have character, you can create music or story or anything with no skills. You can become skilled later on, but you don't have to have skills to be able to create an artistic experience if you have those 3 things.
Are those innate in pretty much everybody, have you found?
I don't know if they're innate in anybody. I mean, it's what I have found will take me from a creative impulse to a creative expression. I mean, those are the first 3. The next is roles, and roles is when you start differentiating what you're doing so that you can collaborate with others. And then after roles, you have practice, which is either that you practice to be able to do something, and you also create a practice so that things can get to you. So you practice to get something, you create a practice so that something can get to you. And that's how you integrate. So roles is how you're able to work with other people or create a symphony rather than just a single story. Practice or practices is how you start integrating that and actually being able to speak with it. The next is deconstruction, that you deconstruct it down to its simplest form so that it could become anything. And then finally you have the moment of liftoff, where you are able to take the simplest form and just express yourself with it. So why was I saying those? I was saying those because they're important. Those are the principles that I kind of, as I'm building things, those are the principles that I ask myself about if I get lost. I was like, okay, so what's the impulse here? What's the structure? How can you got a structure? How can you expand it, alter it, substitute? That's how I ask. But when I saw these pictures, I realized just how deeply important the experience of character is. Like, that's what I want to experience. Mm-hmm. Either when I'm sharing music or when I'm hearing music.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that, you've just talked about your childhood, and it seems like from everything that I've seen in your interviews or your music, that you have kept pretty true to yourself and your dreams, as a child, in being your own person and discovering your talent and your music the way you were going to discover it. How were you able to be true to yourself?
Okay, well, I'm glad that's what it seems like from the outside, and that has not been the journey from the inside at all. And the journey from the inside, like when I first started playing the harp, I actually wanted to be in a box. I didn't know, I felt so out of control in my own artistic expression that I really wanted to become a classical harpist. I felt that that was a true way to be. And I developed that ability, and then I realized that was a box. And then I thought, okay, so I'll play jazz. That'll open up that box. And that did open up the box, but there was still a ceiling to that box. And it wasn't until I was willing to let go of proving myself, basically, proving to myself and others that I could play classical music, proving that I could play jazz on the harp, that I started to reconnect to who I am. And that started a lot with bringing my voice back in, because when I was playing jazz, I was signed to a jazz label, and I was one of the only women who was, only women instrumentalists, one of the only women instrumentalists. And so I was constantly in situations with men where I had to prove myself, like, can she really play, blah, 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 blah. And at a certain point, I realized I am not singing. And singing is a huge part of me as an expressive person.
As your grandma said.
Right. I honestly, I had to put that together. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Right. And I'd had some, anyway, the long and short of it is, well, I'll just tell a brief story. So I had some friends who were singers, and they played the harp, and I was very judgmental then. And I was like, well, they're very good harpists, but I don't know, singing, it's not that great. And I actually went up to them and I said, you're such great harp players. Like, why do you sing? And one of them said to me, she said, they were Scottish, because that's what we do. And I was like, okay, that's what you do, but I'm not going to do that. Let someone hear me singing like that. So the next year, they put out another album. Their singing's a little bit better, and their harp playing still is great. Next year, they put out an album. Their singing's pretty good. And third year, they put out an album. Their singing's really good, and their harp playing's really good. But my singing isn't any better, because I have not been willing to go out there and do it. And that's also a principle of practice. You have to be bad to be good. You have to be willing to go through that. And so when I realized that I was not putting my voice out there, I decided to start singing. And I will never forget the first moment that I was in a jazz club in Berlin, and with my bass player, and I decided to sing Georgia on My Mind. And I'm like, Georgia, I'm singing Georgia. I come to the end of the song and I'm like, so what'd you think? And he was like, you are a very good harp player. And I was like, no. What did you think of the singing? And he was like, you're a very good harp player. And I was like, crap. And then I came home and I sang in a concert, and this woman who I really respected came up afterwards and talked to my manager, and she said, you must tell Deborah to stop singing. She is going to ruin her career. And my manager told me, and I just thought, you know what? That's what I do.
That's what?
That's what I do. I sing.
Mm-hmm.
Good or bad, it doesn't matter. That's what I do.
And it was that point that you decided that you were going to be a singer as well as a.
I don't think of myself as a singer.
You were going to sing and play the harp together.
That I was going to allow all of my voice.
Right.
Whatever that voice is, the physicality of my voice, the speaking of my voice as a human being. But I would not have had the courage to do that if it had not been for those harpists in Scotland who showed me that. Mm-hmm. cowering in my technical ability on the instrument. And that's happened over and over again, where, there were very, very dark times when I was trying to live out somebody else's dream or be something. Even after this huge triumph of, invention and alchemy, I was working with an agent who was saying, I can't book you unless you can play rock and roll. And I mean, I was trying, and I it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that. So I love that that it looks like I have stayed true to myself, but that is not true. And however, I will say that I was asking a friend recently, what is success? And he said, well, success is a loaded word. And, there's the success of, we look at external things, we look at career and we look at money.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the success of being, of self-actualization,
Mm-hmm.
it is the love of a person to not give up on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say that I have had great success in that, but not because I did not give up. I mean, it's not like I didn't ever give up. I for sure have given up. And through support of other people and love of other people, and getting to see other people who are standing up, loving and who they are, I have been able to come back to a truth of myself, which I am sure that I will be working on for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I think that it is, sometimes we are the last people to know, something.
Right, right.
But I would say that every time I've heard your music, seen you perform, the authenticity of who you are, that is non-negotiable, I would say, comes through. And nobody in the audience, because every one of us in the audience is insecure about something, right? So when there's somebody that's up there saying, I'm who I am, and that's non-negotiable, and either you have fun with me or you don't, but and people are just going to join that because they do, because we want to have fun with you.
Well, it's funny, Cindy, because I used to have this dog named Emery, and he was scared of everything and everybody all the time. Always, he was just scared, and he would bark and just except when he was in the car. And when he was in the car, he was like this marvelous, friendly, dog. Well, that is how I am on stage. I mean, I'm not saying I'm barking all the time off stage, but I will say that when I walk onto a stage, I feel like I belong there. I feel like I have a job there. My job is an ambassador to the world of imagination and music. And I am living to step out of my darkness with a light that only illuminates when I touch others. That is my job right there and then. My job is to become a window into that world. And I feel comfortable because I know my job right then. And I can do that job.
Like you'd said this to me before, and I actually wrote it down as a quote. You said, I see myself as an ambassador, and you've used that word several times. I see myself as an ambassador in the world of music and imagination, and that my job is to step out of my own darkness with the light that illuminates when I touch others.
Right.
And every morning, this is what I'm living for. I can't see it until it's illuminated by touching others.
Right.
And I just think that's an amazing way of looking at your art form and what you do. That's your job. Like that's what you said.
Wait a minute. There was a preposition in the beginning. I am an ambassador to the world. I am ambassador to bring people to the world of music and imagination. Or an ambassador from the world.
Yeah. To the world instead of in the world of music. To the world of music.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. or I mean, I will think about it the way you said it and see what
Yeah.
that opens up for me too. But yes, I do say that every morning. I mean, I come from Swedes as well as Russians. You know, I want to have a job. I want to know what my job is. I
The
wanna do it.
Swedes want jobs.
Well, I mean, you know, they were farmers.
Yeah.
You want to be useful. You want to have a job. That's the beauty, is to be useful and to know that you're useful, and to do the job that you're here to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's very Swedish. I'm asking because I'm also Swedish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't really understand.
Try to understand myself. You could psychoanalyze me.
Never understood that I was Swedish until I heard somebody say something like, yeah, Swedes, you know, like most people, you come to a wall and you go over it. A Swede, they'll come up to a wall and they'll just like try to push through it. And I was like, oh my God, I am Swedish.
I love it. I love it.
So anyway, so you were talking about the magic. And I will say that for me, drawing is magical, and in part because that's not what I do for my job. It's really for me, you know. It's a beautiful, and I feel like when I draw, these characters come to life, and they're magical and they're wonderful, and the characters in my mind, my imagination, my imaginary friends, they are magical and real too. But I didn't have imaginary friends as a child. I only got them as an adult.
That's very interesting. I want to move on to the part where I feel you are a revolutionary, and you know it's really funny, you know, when we put big words on to people like revolutionary and, you know, change the world, but you have that is one thing that no one can take away from you, and that is that you have actually revolutionized the way people look at a harp and play the harp. And you actually have a harp named after you.
Right, that's right.
It's right behind you.
That's right.
Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really funny. I hear what you're saying, and from my standpoint, I just, that's how I think I was just like, it was mysterious to me. It was like, well, what, how come there's okay. So when I was a kid, my parents split up, but my dad gave me a book. So I hardly had anything from my dad. I had a bike and I had a book and a couple of things. It doesn't matter. And a postcard. But I'm going on a diversion here. Okay, come back to Earth. Yes. So I had this book and it was of ancient Egypt. And in the middle there was a centerfold, and there were these women walking across the page wearing harps. And so, and that's the first harps I saw. I didn't see a big concert harp like that. And so that stuck in my mind. So when I started playing these harps, I was like, where's those other ones? Like, where's the ones that you wear? And people would be like, no, there's no harps that you wear. And I'm like, yeah, they were like in ancient Egypt, like they can't have, like, where did they go? And so it was in my brain, like, of course that's going to happen. Or I was thinking, well, guitar became an electric guitar. Harp should become an electric harp. What if electric guitar married a harp? They'd have an electric harp child. So, I mean, it just didn't seem, I didn't feel like I was being revolutionary. I felt like, where is this thing? This thing clearly needs to exist. Where is it? So it was more a frustration. Like, it's not like, I shall be a revolutionary and I shall invent this. It was more like, how come, I mean, I would like try to pick this up and wear it and, you know, stuff like that. And anyway, so I don't know what to say about being revolutionary. It mostly feels like being very frustrated. Like, why is the thing that is true in my head not true in the world?
But I'm thinking that part of the revolutionary is that somebody sees that something needs to exist, you know, a scientist or, you know, somebody sees something, and you know, those people who wait around for somebody else to invent it are not the revolutionaries. The revolutionaries are the ones that are gonna, you know, say, we got to somehow get this. And that's what you did. And actually, you gave an amazing TED Talk. I love your TED Talk. I've listened to it several times, and it's a brilliant TED Talk. So everybody who's listening, I'm going to put it in the description below so that you can go there, because it's one of the best TED Talks. You're hilarious in it, and you tell this amazing story about how DHC came to be.
Right, how the DHC harp came to be. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I loved doing that TED Talk, and I loved working with the TED people. I mean, it was great. It's not like I could tell that story like that. They were incredible at helping to shape that, and it's so fun to be able to tell that story.
Well, it's hilarious. It's really hilarious, and I love the part in it where you say you wanted to, you asked your boyfriend if you could play jazz on a harp, and he said, no, I don't think you could do that. And you say, so I got another boyfriend.
That's right. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that way of navigating, but yeah, that is what happened.
Yeah. And to start playing jazz on the harp. And so there's that revolutionary where you just saw vision, and you just went, it sounds like you followed where your instincts were taking you, which is a way in which you created yourself and created your own voice.
It's interesting again, Cindy. I think when I was, I remember, I don't know how old I was. My family played this game called Dictionary. And so in the dictionary game, it finds a word in the dictionary that they think nobody knows. And you write down the real definition, and everybody else makes up definitions. And I was looking, and I found this word, and it was called noumenon.
What is it?
Noumenon, Noumenon. And the definition was a thing in itself as separate from its physical existence.
Wow.
And I mean, my brain just was like, it was like that moment with Debussy. My brain just went, oh, my brain thought, oh, that sounds so much like something I'd say. They'll never guess this is the right definition. And so I knew I'd win this round. But it also, the word was just like, wow, a thing in itself as separate from its physical, how it's physically manifesting in the moment. So that word worked on me. It's always worked on me. So that, imagining a harp that you can wear, it just didn't seem that like it. If you take a harp apart, if you stop thinking a harp is this thing and it's this big and it has pedals and if you just think a thing in itself, what is it in itself? And if you let go, and I think this is why deconstruction is the sixth, string,
right?
The passion. Deconstruction is what opens up a thing to be, an idea to be anything. Mm. That's why, in Invention and Alchemy, I can take a piece that I'd played on solo harp and boom, now it's there for symphony orchestra, or, and a harp can be boom, it can become, now I feel like this is fireworks and they're coming down. It can become it can change shape. It doesn't have to have that shape. I mean, at first I was like, well, it's a triangle and strings. No, wait, no. It is a way for your fingers to sing. Okay, so if that's what it is, then, how do you break it down after that? What is it like? It's like a bicycle. Then, it's like shaped like a bicycle. Anyway, the point is that once you take that word and apply it, mm-hmm. Anything can break apart. And then I'm not trying to say I'm not a revolutionary. It's just that
You didn't set out to be a revolutionary.
No, I set out to do things that seemed like they were logical things to do. It seemed logical to strap a harp on and walk around with it and play.
And wear cowboy boots and have look like a goddess while you're doing it.
Well, that just seemed comfortable. The cowboy boots seemed really comfortable. By the way, I first wore them in Texas. I was on tour with the Boston Pops, and my feet were killing me from high heels. And I was in Texas, and I thought, like, of all the places in the world that I could get away with cowboy boots, it would be here. And so I had on, this like ball gown, short ball gown, and cowboy boots. And then I just started like putting, bling on them and stuff like that.
That's
So
great.
yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to deflect the revolutionary thing, and I think it's worth thinking about, because I think that if we can break that apart, then people, and I wouldn't call it revolutionary, I would call it transformation,
Mhm.
because I think it's something that anyone can do and can happen in any moment of our lives when we stop trying to fit into the thing as it's working this way, and think, wait, how would it really work for me?
Right. Well, in your story about the DHC
Yeah,
and your harp,
yeah.
um, the makers of it said that people were ordering it, and why were they ordering it? And part of it was because some woman had invented it and pushed it and made it happen. And then here, all of a sudden, there's a woman who's got a harp strapped onto her, and she's kicking butt, and she's up there doing all of this stuff with this harp as if it were a part of her appendage, and
Right.
as if it were another character that was interacting with her on stage in an improvisation. And people were like, I want to do that. And guess what?
Now they can. Well,
Now
it's interesting, because when they built me my first prototype, I mean, I built the first prototype, and then they saw what I wanted, and then they started building prototypes for me, and I thought it was the harp of the future, I was like, the minute anyone sees this, they're just going to want it, and they're going to go out there. And I was like, seriously, I was like, everyone's going to want this. So I was like, hey, where is everybody? And people weren't. And finally, well, when you see the TED Talk, you'll see the whole story and what happened and what was the shift there. But when they finally started buying it, I talked to the builder, and I said, what do you think? Was it your last, the last things that we did? I mean, what was it that made them do that? And he was like, it was because you have been out there for a generation.
yeah.
Little girls, little boys saw you doing this when it was their first image of a harp, or their first time they were taken by it, and now they're grown up and they want their harp. And I mean, I swear, Cindy was like, I've been doing it that long? I thought I just started yesterday. That was just like a moment for me, like, that's a generation. Oh yeah, like that's 20 years. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you had this quote that you said in your interview that I thought was really good. You said, you have to be a victim. So you said, you have to be a victim of your own art. You have to be slayed by it. What do you mean by that? I love that quote.
This is not my quote. This is my teacher Tony's quote. So
Okay.
when I felt very, very constrained by the harp, or by the big harp, I heard about this man named Tony Montanaro, who was a mime, but he did not wear whiteface, and he talked. So he was, again, obviously not a slave to conventions, and he had what he called his work was physical eloquence. And I went and worked with him, and he was the one who taught me to get out from behind the harp. And we did that by literally playing with the harp, turning it into a horse, turning it into, I mean, we were all as a group playing with it. So there were people who'd never touched a harp before, showing me sides of it, opening up I felt like people just went in and like pulled my brain apart so that I could see it. And Tony was the one who said, you have to be a victim of your own work. You have to be slayed by it. You have to be doing things that make you feel, he didn't say it this, but you have to be doing things that make you so vulnerable and that are so meaningful, and what you want to see. That's what you have to do. And you have to do it in such a way that you make yourself cry, or you make yourself laugh. You are your first audience.
Well, I guess if it doesn't touch you, I don't know if it can touch someone else.
Right. Then why are you sharing it? I mean, when I say to step out, I mean, my job is to step out of my darkness with a light I don't know I have, that's illuminated when I touch others, or when I'm touched by others, when there's that contact with others. As artists, well, as human beings, our job is to, put our voice print or whatever it is into the mosaic of humanity, so that there is a full spectrum of what that of what that is. And we have a lifetime to find that voice, and surely it takes that long to find that authentic voice, so that we can take it out and we can put it in. It's almost like, here's my star, I'm done. I mean, not that I'm done, but I mean, that's what we're here. I think that's what we're here for, is to add our voice to that. And I don't mean our speaking voice. I mean the voice of who we are. We add to the voice of humanity. And when I was a kid, I used to play this game called Extractions, where I was about 8. And I don't know why I did this. I would imagine that I was all alone. I wanted to know what nothingness was. And the point and I don't want to forget where I'm going here. Okay, so I wanted to know what nothingness was. And so I would imagine myself, here, and then I would imagine that this room was the only thing that was. It was floating in space. And then I would imagine that only my body was just floating in space. Everything else was nothing. And then I would I'd be gone. And so that's how I could experience nothingness. But then I got scared because I was like, wait a second, well, if my body's gone and my soul is I don't know where my soul is, and the world is spinning really fast. What if my soul stays there, my body goes off, and my soul doesn't have ears and eyes? So how can it find me? Blah, blah, blah. So this experience, which led to anxiety attacks, this experience became part of a show that I wrote called What the Hell Are You Doing in the Waiting Room for Heaven? And in that show, a father unlike mine actually speaks to his daughter about this. And what he does is he tells her, you have a voice. You have a voice that's yours alone. And this is the tie that binds you. Deep in the dark of evermore, that's how your soul can find you. So raise your voice, for in the end, it's all you have to bring. And this is the sound that turns lost into found when you sing. You have a voice that tells a tale. Nobody else can tell it as well. This is the tale, the song, the story of you. So raise your voice, for no one else can bring the gift you bring. This is the sound that turns lost into found when you sing. So the expression of ourselves, the true expression of ourselves, is the sound that turns being lost into being found, into finding ourselves in the world and placing ourselves in the world and being willing to place ourselves in the world.
Wow. I think we're going to end it at that, because I don't think it's going to get any better. Even though I have a lightning round questions, I think that we're going to leave it at that. We're at the bottom of the hour and a little bit over, and it's been amazing hearing about, if people want to work with you, as you have an academy or
I have an academy, which is usually and almost always harpists, but other people have come to work with me as well in my mentorship program. But people can always go to my website, which is hipharp.com, and that's hipharp.
Hipharp.com.
Hip harp. Hip as in cool, harp as in the instrument. So hipharp.com. And from there you can, see my bio, you can see my blog, you can watch my TED talk from there, and then you can find the academy from there. And then people can always just get in touch with me. And I've coached with other people who are not musicians in terms of performance and expression. And you can just ask me.
And you have something coming up on July 10th. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So this is really exciting. I had the opportunity to create I started writing for symphony orchestra. Not only did I imagine that I was playing this harp that I was wearing, but I also imagined I was doing it in front of a full symphony orchestra. And neither the harp nor the orchestra existed. So I worked on those for decades. And I became a symphony soloist, going around the country playing my original music with symphony. And after one of those shows, a man walked up to me and he said, "You know what I saw out there on stage? I want the whole world to see." And he was a philanthropist, and he had the means to make that happen. And so he invited me to give him a proposal. I actually was going to propose to make a CD. And then my partner at the time, who was a producer, said, "Are you kidding? Your show, it's so physical, it's so visual. You need to make a DVD." So we did. And so we made this beautiful film called Invention and Alchemy. And it was on DVD. It got a Grammy nomination. It was on PBS stations around the country. And then when DVDs kind of died, nobody could find it. I mean, unless you had a DVD player and a DVD, you can find it. But when COVID-19 happened, I reached out to the symphony I collaborated with on it. And I said, "Do you think that we could get the streaming restrictions lifted just for a while so we could do a fundraiser for the Grand Rapids Symphony?" And in fact, we got those lifted. And so on July 10th, for the first time, the man who walked up to me was Peter Wegge. His wish is finally coming true, that finally the whole world will have the chance to see this. Beautiful. It is, when you make a work that you feel really expresses you, that's what I got to do here. So it's a full 97-minute symphony orchestra. It's funny, it's serious, it's dramatic, it's all those things. It's me.
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually have seen it, and you sent it to me, and it really is so worthwhile, so heart-opening and inspiring. And I think the best thing that we could watch right now during this COVID period, I think it's one of those things that's really worth spending some time. Turn the news off and watch Deborah Henson Conant. So tell us how we can do that. How do we get tickets to that, or what happens?
The easiest thing to do is always just to go to hipharp.com. Hip isn't cool, harp isn't cool, and the instrument, and because it's right on the front page there, and that's just the easiest way to.
Okay, and what time on the 10th is it?
It's gonna be on at 7 p.m. in the U.S. on the 10th, and then we're doing an encore at 7 p.m. in London the next day. And then there'll be a a limited streaming window. So people can get a ticket to all of that by just going to hipharp.com. And the ticket is free.
And is it Eastern time? 7 p.m. Eastern time?
7 p.m. on the 10th is Eastern time. The encores are at different times. But yeah, and it's a fundraiser for the Symphony Orchestra. So we would love for people to donate. So
it's free and donations are welcome.
That's right. Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. And you have many wonderful things to say about that orchestra that you've played with for a bit. And is that in Iowa? Is that?
No, it's in Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
It's amazing because, when I've played this DVD for musicians that are in major symphony orchestras, they're like, "That's Grand Rapids, Michigan?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Grand Rapids, Michigan." You will never see a symphony being more heartfelt, more funny. They dressed up in lab coats for this one piece. It's really incredible. And the conductor is not only an amazing conductor, David Lockington, but he also plays parts with me. I mean, he was willing to play a mad scientist. He was willing to play the Sultan in the story of Scheherazade. It's just a remarkable experience. I know I'm in the middle of it, but when I look at it
you look like you're having so much fun.
I am, and what I love is it's stories and music. It's like this symphonic, magical storybook.
Yeah.
And the other thing I love about it that's really important is it's a beautiful thing for families to watch. It's beautiful for anybody of any age to watch, but because it's happening on so many different levels, it is great for, for whole families of different people of different ages to watch together.
Yeah. And I think all of your music is that way because it's on so many different levels. You have sometimes very adult humor, but then some of the songs that children would just love. But I have actually two last questions for you. These were going to be on my lightning round, but I'm just going to ask you, what song do you think you will be remembered for?
The Nightingale.
I thought so. you know, I can't listen to that without crying. Even you bringing it up, it makes me want to cry. So I think it will definitely be that. And well, and maybe this is the same. What song would you like to have played at your funeral?
Oh, one of them is Merceditas. It's in Invention and Alchemy, and it's just got some glorious moments in it, and to me it's the most, and you can tell I've thought about this. To me it's the most romantic, and I'm not with a partner right now, and I long to dance with someone to this particular piece of music.
Mm. What song is that, so that when we're watching we can?
It's called Merceditas. It I love that. Yeah, I really love that. I think there may be some other pieces as well, but that is just so romantic.
Deborah Henson Conant, thank you. This has been so much fun, and good luck with this launch on July 10th.
Thank you.
And we'll be all looking forward to being a part of it and contributing. And thank you so much for your life, for your spirit, and for your magic.
Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for
Yeah,
all.
yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for Cool Cast and watching this interview with Deborah Henson Conant. Again, if you want to see Deborah's work and to have a wonderful experience on July 10th, please go to hipharp.com and you can watch that at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you'd like to contact me, if you have any comments, leave them below. And if you'd like to contact me, you can contact me at cindyloubarlow.com. And I have an academy, it's called Playing You. And I work with people who want to find the roles that they want to play in life. My background is in acting, so I take acting techniques and help people use them in their own life. So thank you for watching. Have a good night and a good day.